Good morning. Namaskar. This helmet smells terrible. 20 days cycling through the Himalayas will do that. 4 months ago, my team and I cycled 400 kilometers through Spiti Valley, one of India's most remote regions. Together, we climbed passes at 15,000 feet. We faced mechanical failures in places where civilization was 50 kilometers away. We made life or death decisions with frozen fingers and oxygen-starved brains. But this helmet, it didn't start its life in the mountains. 2 years ago, it sat in my college hostel room while I spent every Friday running away from all the things I didn't want to face. Every chance I got, for the entirety of my first semester, I would board the overnight bus out of my college town and run home. At first, I told myself it was because of my hostel. It was this tiny room I shared with someone I had just met. When it rained, water would seep in. There were rats running through our halls so often that we ended up naming them. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't really about the room or the rats. I felt uncomfortable in a much deeper way. You see, my classmates and I had no common ground. I was unhappy with my courses, and I felt as if I had squandered my chance at a great education and a good college life. Every day, I woke up disappointed because this was not the future I had envisioned for myself. When I couldn't physically run home, I filled every minute of my everyday with activities. Swimming, squash, running, student council, anything to avoid sitting with the question that followed me everywhere. What if this life is all I'm capable of? What if this is the best I can do? Then one day, I walked past the notice board, the same one I had passed 100 times before. And I see this poster. It's for a cycling program. It involved 3 weeks of early morning training rides before classes that would end in a multi-day expedition through the Western Ghats. Now, I hadn't been on a bicycle in years. I had no experience, no real reason to think I could do it. But for so long, I had tried running away from all the things that made me uncomfortable. And it wasn't working. So what if, for once, I chose to run towards it instead? So when that sign-up sheet came around, I said yes. The morning of our first training ride, 5 a.m. My alarm went off in the dark. The floor was cold, the air was sharp, my entire body staged a protest. But I got up, I put on my gear, and I walked to my bike. That first ride was brutal. My legs burned, my lungs screamed. I was convinced I would collapse on some hill before breakfast. But I kept saying yes, every day. Yes to the cold, yes to the pain, yes to the discomfort. And slowly, something began to shift. Not just in my legs or my lungs, but in my mind. When you choose discomfort before the world even wakes up, you feel invincible for the rest of the day. That shame I had been carrying around, that feeling of being stuck, it was still there. But now, I had something more. I had proof. Proof that I could do hard things, that I had agency over my life. Proof that my circumstances, the bad fit, the disconnect, wouldn't determine my next 4 years in college. I would. So, I kept going. In a mere 3 weeks, I went from learning how to ride a geared bicycle to completing a 200-kilometer expedition through the Western Ghats. This wasn't something I believed I could do. I didn't think of myself as someone who was particularly fit, athletic, or even disciplined, but somehow I did it anyway. And it left me with something new, not confidence exactly, more like curiosity. If I was wrong about that, what else might I be wrong about? I kept cycling after the course ended. I didn't want to lose momentum. Eventually, when the idea of cycling through Sikkim was floated by our professor, I said yes. We trained for months, and then in June of 2024, we set off. This was the first time I had done something of such scale, a high-altitude expedition through the eastern Himalayas. Looking back, I had no idea what I was doing. I was the least experienced on the team, and I spent the entire trip just trying to keep up. It was brutal, it was beautiful, it was one of the most transformative experiences of my life. And I knew, without a doubt, that this wouldn't be the last time I said yes to something of such magnitude. Over the next year, I committed to growing. I cycled consistently, took on more responsibility. I worked on my physical fitness, route planning, bike repair, and leadership. Then came the summer of 2025. I was selected to lead 7 students for 20 days and 400 kilometers through Spiti Valley. Spiti is a high-altitude desert in Himachal Pradesh. The landscape is otherworldly, cold, dusty, and barren. Every town is separated by 60 to 70 kilometers with nothing in between. Leading in the mountains strips away everything fake about you. There are no credentials or titles to hide behind. All that matters is whether you can make the right call when the conditions turn against you. Our first ride was 60 kilometers from Kalpa to Poo. The ride started with a descent, downhill at speeds of 40 to 50 kilometers per hour on roads that were barely paved and had no guardrails. 10 kilometers in, I hear a bike frame hitting the ground. One of my teammates had fallen. Physically, she was okay, just scrapes and bruises. But she kept asking me the same questions over and over again. What happened? Did I fall? Why did we stop? Where are we? She was in complete shock and couldn't remember the last few minutes. She still had 20 more kilometers of that terrifying descent ahead of her. She looked at me and said she couldn't get back on her bike. Every cell in her body was screaming at her to stop. The thing about fear in the mountains is that it feeds on itself. One bad moment can poison everything that comes after it. If she didn't get back on her bike soon, her entire trip would have been over before it really began. So we started impossibly small. Just hold your bike, I told her. We walked with it for a bit. Then we got on and rode at a crawl, hands locked on the brakes, barely moving. For the next several days, every descent was the same. Slow, careful, trepid. Several rides later, we descended Kunzum Pass, one of our most treacherous descents. Loose gravel, falling rocks, roads that barely qualified as roads. And this girl, the same one who had been walking her bike down slopes, descended the pass with speed, confidence, and a huge grin on her face. Later that evening, I asked her what changed. She shrugged and said, I just decided to stop being scared. That's it. She just decided. I had spent 18 months practicing my way into someone braver, someone more confident, and she just chose it. The point is, there isn't one right way to transform. But either way, you have to be the one to make it happen. No one else can do it for you. On another ride, a different teammate was struck by altitude sickness. She was cramping, dizzy, barely able to stand. But we were in the middle of nowhere. No signal, no water, not even any shade. At a snail's pace, we kept going. And eventually, we stumbled upon a nunnery. The nuns there were incredibly kind. They gave us warm food, water, and a place for her to rest. But it was clear she couldn't continue on her cycle. So I borrowed the nun's phone, an old landline. The call kept crackling and cutting. I could barely hear the person on the other end. I wasn't sure if they had caught a word I had said, or if they even knew who was calling. With blind faith, I told my team that we had to move forward, and a truck was coming to pick our teammate up. I placed her bike by the side of the road where it was visible, hoping that when the driver came, if the driver came, he'd see it and know to stop. For the next 4 hours, I was constantly looking back over my shoulder, scanning the road, hoping to see a sign of my teammate. I kept my face neutral, my voice steady, telling everyone it was going to be fine. But inside, I was thinking, what if no one comes? What if you just left her there? Then finally, I saw it. A truck, her bike was in the back, and she was asleep in the passenger seat. The relief was so overwhelming, there were tears in my eyes. That day, I was just lucky things worked out. I didn't make a perfect decision. I don't even know if I made the right one. But it struck me that I had gone from running away from every difficult situation to being the one leading others through them. Everyone has their own version of running home every Friday. That situation you're trying to escape, the life that doesn't match what you imagined. And everyone has their own Spiti Valley moment. Maybe it's starting that business you've been dreaming about. Maybe it's applying for something you think you're not quite qualified for. These are just invitations to step into something bigger, something that terrifies us precisely because we know it might change everything. This helmet still smells like Spiti. I could wash it. I'm not going to. Because every time I pick it up, I'm reminded that 2 years ago, I couldn't have handled any of this. The girl who ran home every Friday couldn't have made that call at the nunnery with nothing but her fingers crossed. She couldn't have looked her teammate in the eye after a fall and convinced her that her fear was worth facing. The distance between these two people, it's not talent, it's not confidence, it's just showing up, even if you don't feel ready, and doing it again and again until one day you look around and realize you're someone new. So, I implore you, find your mountain, whatever it is, and start climbing. Not when you feel ready, not when the conditions are perfect, but now. Because the only way to become someone who can is to simply get started. Thank you.